Now, the Department of Cooperative Governance in KwaZulu-Natal says disaster management teams are on standby following a level 4 inclement weather warning of damaging waves for many coastal areas. According to the South African Weather Services, the waves are expected to rise to 5 meters and could cause severe damage to infrastructure as well as disruption to small harbors. At the same time, preliminary estimations by the Western Cape Department of Agriculture is that damages caused by the major storm that hit the province is around 1.3 billion rand. While assessments are still underway as many roads remain inaccessible, the department says major losses were recorded in the export fruit industry. This is a large component of the industry and one of the several key drivers of the economy in the Western Cape. SABC News reporter Mariska Botha spoke to the MEC for Agriculture to get an update.
We're standing in Stellenbosch in the Cape Winelands where the sun is coming down and you simply cannot believe that the surrounding area is looking so beautiful that the very road that we're standing on was underwater just a few days ago in what was a record-breaking storm that hit the Western Cape. Of course, a major component of the economy of the Western Cape is agriculture. And to talk to us about the impact of the latest storm, because remember, a few months ago there was another flooding event in the province that also caused significant damage. To talk to us about the latest damage and the impact on agriculture, we have the MEC for Agriculture in the Western Cape, Dr Ivan Meyer. Dr Meyer, thank you very much for your time. You are still in your gear. It is still a disaster. You're going around the province. Give us an overview of what it looks like for the agriculture sector on this Wednesday.
Absolutely, you are correct. This is the second storm, massive rainfalls that we've had. I was here 2 days ago. This whole place was underwater. We had a devastating impact on the agricultural sector 2 months ago. And now we are facing yet another major disaster, specifically in 2 areas. In the Cape Winelands areas where we are right now, but also in a very high agricultural production area in the Overberg region. But the Central Karoo, the Garden Route, as well as the West Coast were also severely affected. And all of these are massive agricultural production regions. And so, unfortunately, we have seen massive losses. For example, in infrastructure damages is in the region of 300 million rand. That's a preliminary assessment from my department. We've also seen about 200 million rand loss of crops, but also the biggest impact thus far is the loss of the topsoil, about 800 million. So in total, we are seeing an initial assessment. It's in the region of 1.4 billion rand affecting the agricultural sector. Now, this is very serious because, as you know, we are a major agricultural export region here in the Western Cape. And we are also, particularly South Africa, is a major exporter of citrus. So it is the citrus industry, the deciduous fruit industry, the table grape industry, massive losses also to the vegetables, but also the fruit industry. Lots of losses, and we will still have to further make further assessments because many of the farmers and the roads are closed. So many of the farmers are unable to get onto the farms to do final assessments. But this is devastating to the agricultural sector here in the Western Cape.
We spoke a little bit earlier and you explained a bit to me. If you don't mind explaining to our viewers as well, this might not necessarily have an impact on food security.
Well, certainly, because most of these stuff are exports, particularly table grapes, for example, the whole issue of citrus industry exports. I don't think this will have a major impact on food security, but it will definitely impact on our export industry. This is a major industry, but also for farmers, the production input cost, farmers will now have to revert back in terms of repairing, and we are also in terms of our Department of Infrastructure, the first priority now is to reconnect the roads. Some of the roads were washed away, for example, in the N2 there by Botha River, but there are major hold-ups also across the Western Cape, and our Department of Infrastructure and road infrastructure, particularly now on site. We have a great day today here, so it is possible to go there and do the emergency repair work, and this is unfortunately the second one, and according to the Weather Bureau, this was a level 9 warning, and there's more rain expected. Climate change is real, well. And that's why the Western Cape government is now going to look more intensely in terms of the patterns that we see in terms of climate change, so that we have more strategic advantages in terms of adaptation and climate change mitigation strategies here in the Western Cape.
Now, you said it might not necessarily have an impact on food security. You said not at all, but it is still a major employer, agriculture, and especially those industries that you mentioned. Talk to us about the impact on the economy it will have.
Well, certainly the agricultural sector, specifically the primary agriculture, is about 4% of the GDP of the Western Cape. So that's significant. In terms of the agri-processing, it's about 7%. So in total, the agricultural sector, part of the economy, is about 11%, because you cannot have secondary agriculture, you cannot have agri-processing without primary agriculture. So it will certainly affect that. But also, the Western Cape is responsible for 55% of South Africa's agricultural exports. So this certainly will have a negative impact. Also, our economic modeling shows that if you have a 5% growth in exports, you create 22,000 new jobs. And if you have a 5% decline in your exports, you lose 22,000 jobs in the agricultural sector. So yes, absolutely, this has a massive knock-on effect. There's about 236,000 people working directly in the primary agriculture, another 250,000 in the secondary agriculture. 17% of everybody that works in the Western Cape works in the agricultural sector, so they will definitely be affected. We have seen, for example, in the West Coast, where I come from, 39% of everybody that works are working in the agricultural sector. So there's a massive knock-on effect, employment. We have seen, for example, in the past week, the numbers that came out, agriculture is the shining light in the agricultural growth. And so this will obviously put a temporary burden on that. But I am convinced and persuaded by farmers that this is another season that they will survive, because our farmers are very resilient here in the Western Cape.
And then maybe lastly, where to from now? You were still busy with the process of a disaster declaration, or a request for a disaster declaration from the previous storm that we had. Will you start a new process now after following this storm?
Well, at the previous storm, we have made an assessment in terms of the damages. We were persuaded by the felt assessment, the assessment that we have done with the farmers, that is enough insignificant to persuade the Western Cape Cabinet for a declaration. So we have submitted a declaration application to the national government. We're still waiting for the outcome of that. But there is no doubt, in my view, in the next week or 2 weeks, we will be on the ground visiting the farms and the farming areas to determine the impact of this latest severe thunderstorms on agriculture. And we will then put another cabinet submission and asking for another declaration for a storm. This will be severely impacting on the adjustment budget later this year, around about in November. And so we will be able to submit another application to the national government, because the evidence on the ground, the pictorial evidence, the evidence from the farmers clearly demonstrate that this is a massive disaster.
And then lastly, how are you assisting right now? I know you're still busy with assessment, but what kicks in after the assessment?
Well, currently what we are now doing, we are having WhatsApp groups with the farmers to ask them to send us some pictures and information and damages their own, and then we do the verification of that. But for now, the most important is to make sure that we repair the road infrastructure, because some of the roads, the farmers do not have access to roads, and that's very important. Some of the towns are completely not accessible, and for us it is important that we create access to the farms, restore the secondary roads in particular, the roads in the district areas. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is then to gather the information, to prepare a cabinet submission, to do the application for the declaration of the disaster. That's what we do now. Also supporting farmers in terms of rivers that were destroyed, low water bridges that were destroyed on farms. So that's what we are busy with right now.
Thank you very much. That was the MEC for Agriculture in the Western Cape, Dr. Ivan Meyer. painting a grim picture at this time, particularly for farmers in the agri-export sector. As you heard him say, the Western Cape is the largest agri-exporter, a massive employer across the province, providing tens of thousands of jobs to people. So there's a tough road ahead for the agricultural sector as it tries to recover from yet another major storm. I saw a little bit earlier, a little bit of data showing that this has been a record-breaking storm. We are seeing dams at more than 100% capacity. Rivers are breaking their banks. So this is certainly a tough time that lies ahead. But as you heard there from the MEC saying, after assessments, they will start with the process for a declaration of a disaster. And that, of course, if national government approves it, brings in extra funding that can assist the province to help where the help is the most urgently needed. So quite a long road ahead here in the Western Cape for the agriculture sector.